Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Blurred Lines podcast, where we talk about true crime, conspiracy theories, and the truth behind the gossip. I'm your host, Ashley, or as some of you guys may know me, Ash Too Trippy. That's how I go by on all of my social media platforms. So if you guys want to follow me over there, we talk about the same things as we do here. I just want to again thank each and every one of you guys for listening every week. And as always, don't forget to subscribe if you've been listening to a few episodes. Subscribe, leave a review. It helps us out so much over here. Now, I wanted to kind of give you guys a little bit of an announcement. So I know here on Blurred Lines podcast, we have, up until now, I've put up at least, I think there's like 40 some episodes out by now. I split it up in 2 seasons because the first season that you guys got, I was just starting this journey, and a lot of those first season episodes they don't have facts like I wanted them to, or there was stuff that I forgot that I had to put in there. It was just really hard back then for me to do research, working more than part-time and having to, I just didn't have everything organized. I was still doing my content and I didn't know how to organize it. So now, now that we're into second season, which started in this year of 2026 in January, now that we've kind of gone into a lot of the crime, I really want to turn this podcast into something that's a lot like my social media platforms, because my social media platforms, we talk about true crime, conspiracy theories, and gossip. And a lot of times I do feel like the lines are blurred. And I wanted this podcast for a while. My vision for the podcast was just to do true crime, only talk about true crime. For a while in the first season, I was really only looking at doing like solved true crime cases or making awareness to like missing people and things like that. But as I've gone on and as the podcast has evolved, and I want your guys' opinions on this, I'm going to be posting a poll after, probably once this episode comes out, I'm going to be posting a poll over on my social media sites. I'm going to start talking about gossip on here because I think a lot of the stories, especially ones that we talk about, bring awareness. I think it's important for a lot of people to see what's going on the internet, because not everybody is on the internet as much as other people. I'm on the internet solely because I do my content creation. Yes, I started as being, way too much on the internet because I was scrolling endlessly and mindlessly for about a year until I started posting actual content. I want to talk about all the things I talk about on my channels, and since every single day I tell you guys to go and check out my TikTok, my YouTube, my Facebook, my Instagram, on all those platforms, we don't only talk about true crime. Yes, I talk about a lot of true crime, but we also talk about conspiracy theories, gossip. I know conspiracy theories are I've kind of fall behind on those, but I want to also bring that here. So I want to know your guys' thoughts. Do you guys think that we should start, dissecting gossip here? Or do you think that doesn't live here? I really want to know your guys' opinions. Because if it doesn't live here, that's fine. It lives on all my other social media platforms already. But I think it's important, especially, I don't know if you guys have been following the Bunny XO and Jelly Roll thing. They actually got a divorce. That goes into a lot of criminal aspects as well, in my opinion, of course. Let me know what you guys think, and again, I'll put a poll up once this episode comes out and see what you guys think about it, because even if we just do like a segment where it's like internet stuff that I've been talking about, we can even do that, but we'll still talk about these cases that are solved, unsolved, missing people, because that's the heart of true crime. That's the heart of Blurred Lines, is sometimes things on the internet get talked about or gossiped about and misconstrued. So I do fit that a lot into some of the cases that I've done. And a lot of cases that I have done, I've been around when they broke on the internet, so I can kind of give you guys that perspective of things. Again, it's totally up to you. You guys are the ones listening to this every week, and I do appreciate it. Now, I hope you guys did catch up on last week's episode. We talked about the Idaho 4. That one I actually had been wanting to cover for a while. I was kind of waiting until I read a book that I got, and there was actually a couple books that I was recommended, but I thought I'd put it out there, and if we need to do a second part to that, we definitely can. I think the victims do always need to be remembered, and the families are doing some really wonderful things. So if you guys didn't listen to last week's episode, go and check it out. We talked about the Idaho 4. If this is your first episode, definitely go back and listen to some of the last ones. They're amazing. But let's get into today's case, guys. So today's case is one that shocked not only Milwaukee, Wisconsin, but people across the country. It's a case that started with something completely ordinary, a first date. A young woman with her entire future ahead of her went out to dinner with a man she barely knew, and unfortunately, she never came home. Within days, investigators would uncover a horrifying trail of evidence involving a burned vehicle, scattered human remains, surveillance footage, and a suspect whose actions would leave an entire community searching for answers. This is the story of Sade Robinson. So grab your coffee, grab your tea, grab your Red Bull like me. Didn't mean to rhyme, sorry guys. Settle in, and let's talk about it. Now, before we talk about the crime, we need to talk about Sade, because true crime would never begin with the killer. As always, we do begin with the most important part. Sade Carlina Robinson was 19 years old. She was born in Mississippi. Sade moved to Milwaukee with her family before she turned 2. She was raised in a close-knit household by her mother, Sheena Scarborough, and her father, Carlos Robinson. She was a student studying criminal justice at Milwaukee Area Technical College. Friends and family described her as ambitious, intelligent, outgoing, and driven. She reportedly maintained a strong GPA while working multiple jobs and had dreams of joining the Air Force after graduation. She was the kind of young woman who had plans, goals, a future. Those who knew her described someone who lit up a room. She was a daughter, a friend, a student, and a young woman building a life for herself. But on April 1st, 2024, everything changed. Like many people her age, Sade met someone and agreed to go out. The man was 33-year-old Maxwell Anderson. The age difference immediately caught many people's attention later, but at the time, it simply was just a first date. On April 1st, Sade and Anderson met at Milwaukee waterfront locations including Twisted Fisherman and Duke's on Water. Surveillance footage would later show them together throughout the evening. Friends and family had no reason to believe anything was wrong. It was a date. People go on dates every day. But according to investigators, after dinner and drinks, Sade went back to Anderson's residence. And that would be the last time she was ever seen alive. Now, I wanted to get into a little bit of statistics here. Now, according to a report by the Bureau of Justice Statistics, about 34% of female murder victims and 6% of male murder victims were killed by an intimate partner. I also want to put that in perspective that this does not happen every day. This is not a normal thing, especially on a first date. I looked at the statistics as far as first dates go, and normally with first dates, a lot of people don't put trust in the other person, especially nowadays, to go to their home and feel comfortable. That put aside, there are a lot of people that do go back and talk or go to a residence of their first date. But none, or very few, end up the way Sade did. Now, the next morning, alarms began going off. Sade failed to show up for work. Her family couldn't reach her. Friends couldn't reach her. For anyone who has experienced this with someone they love, you know the feeling. At first, maybe they overslept, or maybe their phone had died, or maybe something just came up. But as hours passed, concern turned into panic. A missing person report was filed, and investigators quickly began retracing her final moments. What they discovered next would transform the case from a missing person investigation into a homicide investigation. When you get that feeling somebody doesn't answer their phone and they always answer, or then they don't answer their phone and you start thinking the worst thoughts in your mind. Everybody in this story probably felt that way because a lot of people don't not answer their phones. There's very few people that actually screen every single call. Very few people that won't call you back right away. And there's numerous ways of communicating. If somebody doesn't get a text message, maybe they'll get a Facebook message, or you can FaceTime them or call them, or, there's tracking devices now. There's so many different things. On April 2nd, a severed human leg was discovered near Lake Michigan at Warner Park in Wisconsin. One detail stood out immediately. The toes were painted pink. As investigators worked to identify the remains, evidence began pointing towards Sade Robinson. Meanwhile, other alarming discoveries were being made. Her vehicle was found burned, not abandoned and not hidden, but burned. Investigators immediately suspected someone had attempted to destroy evidence. And as the search expanded, more evidence began emerging. Police started examining surveillance footage, phone records, and digital evidence. The timeline led them directly to Maxwell Anderson. According to prosecutors, electronic evidence showed Anderson was the last known person with Sade. Surveillance cameras tracked portions of their evening, while cell phone data helped investigators reconstruct movement after the date. The evidence was mounting quickly. Then came another discovery. Investigators located additional human remains. The case was becoming more horrific by the day. Weeks after Sade disappeared, additional remains washed ashore along Lake Michigan. A torso, an arm. Later, another arm was discovered in Illinois and identified as belonging to Sade. The discoveries painted a terrifying picture. Investigators believe Sade had been murdered, dismembered, and her remains scattered across multiple locations. Even more heartbreaking, not all of Sade's remains have ever been recovered. Imagine being her family, waiting, hoping, and searching, never receiving the closure every family deserves. Again, not all of Sade Robinson's remains were located. Now, authorities and volunteers did recover several of her body parts from various locations, and her mother did confirm that they were never able to recover all of her remains. The initial discoveries were a severed leg, which was found at that park in Wisconsin. And shortly after she went missing in early April 2024, shortly after a torso and arm washed ashore on South Milwaukee, and other body parts and tissue were discovered in different areas of the city. The scattered remains. So the suspect, Maxwell Anderson, is accused of dismembering Robinson and scattering her remains across multiple locations in Milwaukee County and as far as Waukegan, Illinois. I hope I said that right. Waukegan? These names are wild. In the late summer of 2024, Robinson's family did receive the remains. They were recovered and they actually held a memorial. Her mother publicly stated that while they were able to lay her to rest, they did not have all the remains. But it looks like all that was located was her leg, an arm, and a torso. On April 4th, 2024, Maxwell Anderson was arrested. Just days later, prosecutors formally charged him with first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, hiding a corpse, and arson. The allegations were horrifying. Investigators believed Anderson killed Sade after their first date, dismembering her body, scattering her remains, and burned her vehicle in an effort to conceal the crime. Yet despite the evidence, the question remained: why? Now, one of the most frustrating aspects of this case is that a clear motive has never been fully established. Prosecutors focused heavily on the evidence rather than trying to explain exactly why Anderson killed Sade. Many observers have speculated, was it sexual violence, maybe even control, a fantasy that escalated, or premeditation? At one point, reports surfaced that a confidential informant claimed Anderson had discussed violent plans before Sade's murder. However, listeners should understand that allegations from informants are not the same as proven facts in court. The reality is that some killers never provide an answer that satisfies anyone. Sometimes the why dies with the perpetrator. And unfortunately, even with the Brian Kohberger Idaho 4 case, we still don't really know why. And a lot of people point to incels. I've heard people talk about Maxwell Anderson being an incel as well. But he was a violent person to begin with. So to me too, it's like ignoring the other violent tendencies in the past sometimes, you know? The trial finally began in 2025, and prosecutors laid out the disturbing case. Jurors heard evidence from surveillance footage, cell phone records, digital evidence, witness testimony, and graphic evidence recovered during the investigation. According to prosecutors, photos recovered from Anderson's phone showed Sade incapacitated inside his residence during the night she disappeared. Those photographs became a significant piece of evidence during the trial. The prosecution argued the evidence pointed overwhelmingly towards Anderson's guilt. The defense argued there was no direct eyewitness to the killing and challenged aspects of the state's case. Ultimately, the jury had to decide. Now, the jury deliberated for only a short period before reaching a decision, which was guilty on all the counts. He was convicted of first-degree intentional homicide, mutilating a corpse, hiding a corpse, and arson for setting her car on fire. For Sade's family, it was justice, but not closure, because closure implies the pain ends. And anyone who has lost someone knows that's not true. In August of 2025, Anderson received a life sentence for Sade's murder. The sentence ensured he would spend the rest of his life behind bars. But for many people following the case, the punishment could never undo the devastation left behind. A family lost their daughter. Friends lost someone they loved. A community lost a bright young woman who should have had decades ahead of her. Milwaukee rallied around Sade's family. Memorials appeared throughout the city. Many featured pink decorations because pink was reportedly Sade's favorite color. A mural was later created in her honor. Community members attended vigils. People who had never met Sade mourned her. Because her story touched a nerve, for many women, this case represented a terrifying reality. A routine date, a normal night, a person you think you know, and danger hiding in plain sight. Now, I wanted to talk a little bit about Sade's family. Her mother specifically has advocated for her daughter tremendously. And they do have a foundation in Sade's name. That foundation is called Sade's Voice Foundation. I'll leave it linked down below. You can find memorials. You can find here things that they have done. I'm going to read a little bit from this and what it's about. Sade's Voice Foundation honored Sade Robinson's legacy through programs focusing on safety, healing, education, as well as prevention. Led by her family and community partners, we empower women, youth, and families through trauma-informed support and advocacy. It's just wonderful. Her mother is the CEO and founder, and she is also a trauma-informed care grief specialist as well. And it seems like she has a wonderful team behind her. There is so much going on here. And again, I'm going to leave it all linked down below. And it's just so wonderful to see when families carry on the honor of somebody that they love, and especially when somebody dies so horrifically. It really shows how a life can change a perspective of a lot of things, you know? Cases like Sade's spark difficult discussions: dating safety, violence against women, online connections, as well as trust, and how quickly ordinary situations can become dangerous. It's important to remember that responsibility never falls on victims. Sade didn't do anything wrong. She went on a date. That's it. The responsibility belongs solely to the person who chose violence. And that's Maxwell Anderson, who is going to be sitting in prison for the rest of his life. Now, as we close today's episode, I want to bring the focus back to Sade. Not the crime, not the killer, just Sade Robinson. A 19-year-old woman with dreams, goals, and a future. A future that was unfortunately stolen from her. While justice was eventually served through the courts, there's still unanswered questions. Some of her remains have never been found. Many questions about motive remain unanswered, and her family continues to live with an unimaginable loss. But Sade's name continues to be remembered, and sometimes that's one of the most important things we can do. Remember the victim. Speak their name. And tell their story. And refuse to let them ever be forgotten. And that is the rewarding part of having this podcast. I want to thank you guys for listening today to this episode of Blurred Lines Podcast. Be sure you guys are subscribed to the podcast wherever you're listening, and please rate and review. I'm Ashley, also known as Ash2Trippy. Stay safe, stay curious, and remember that sometimes the most dangerous people hide behind the most ordinary faces. Until next time, bye guys.